Well, President Trump touched down in Rome earlier today for his third leg of his first international trip in office. Boy, it's been a pretty historic one for the president. He's touting his success so far.
Trump tweeted earlier this afternoon, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the Middle East were great, trying hard for peace, doing well, heading to Vatican and Pope, then G7 and NATO. Let's bring in Michael Rubin now, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute. He joins us now from Washington. Michael, what do you think about the president and what he's said on this trip? We've definitely seen someone a little bit different than certainly candidate Donald Trump. What do you make of some of his bold moves, like expressing optimism towards brokering peace in the Middle East?
Well, you know, I'm not sure I've ever heard of a president who doesn't express optimism at the beginning of their term about their own personal ability to broker peace in the Middle East. Then the longer they are in the Oval Office, the more difficult they realize it is. President Trump at this point is basically enjoying the honeymoon period where both the Israelis and the Saudis are thrilled that he's not President Obama. They're thrilled for the possibility of change, but there's a big difference between that honeymoon and then the rest of the marriage.
That's an interesting point that you make. You know, I was surprised by the fact when he was in Israel, we didn't hear two things from him: two-state solution or settlements. How differently? It's clear he wants some sort of a Mideast peace plan, and we might hear more about that in the coming weeks. But do you think that's a real possibility given the current climate there?
Well, ultimately, you know, there could be a Middle East peace plan at some point. But the fact of the matter is, going back to the Clinton parameters around 2000, 2001, up through George W. Bush, when you had the Olmert peace plan in 2008, there's really a sense that everyone knows what the parameters of an eventual peace will be. It's just a matter for both the Israelis and the Palestinian Authority to decide to take that extra bold step. Now, President Trump is right that in the broader region, the situation is right. There's more Arab states that have relations with Israel now than at any point in history. The problem is the Palestinians in the future, simply because Mahmoud Abbas is now in the 13th year of his 4-year term, and he's 82 years old, and he may not last out the year given his health.
You know, do you think that the president framing Iran as a common enemy will be something that can help Israel with its Arab neighbors?
Well, absolutely, and that's been, even before Trump, what has drawn the Israelis, the Saudis, the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Egyptians all closer together. But when we're talking about an Arab NATO, for example, it's a lot easier to say something like that than bring it into fruition. Remember, in 1981, the Gulf Cooperation Council, those 6 oil-rich Persian Gulf states, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Bahrain, they coalesced in response to Iran, and yet the 6 of them can't organize themselves out of a paper bag.
That's been a big a question many people have. Should the Arab world take more initiative? I couldn't help but notice the first trip he took, foreign, was to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. There was, I think back in 2004, a Saudi initiative peace plan to get Israel and the Palestinians back together again. Do you see President Trump pushing for more involvement for the Saudis? He seemed to be very comfortable with that entire delegation.
Well, yes, I do think that the Saudis are going to play more of a role. And certainly under President Sisi in Egypt, Egypt is going to play more of a role. You know, for the first time, even though Egypt and Israel made peace under Jimmy Carter, for the first time the Israelis actually trust the Egyptian leadership on the security issue. And so you do have a great deal of opportunity now for the Israelis and the Saudis to work together. In fact, they have worked together despite us rather than because of us, simply because of their shared frustration with regard to the threat posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Erica.
But no, just to follow up on Rena's point here, but what about the fact that there are experts out there that really do believe that the Saudis are bankrolling some of these extremists? How do you reconcile that? How does President Trump deal with that?
Well, you know, the Saudis were bankrolling. And of course, we all know that 15 out of the 19 9/11 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia didn't reform in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, but a few years later, 2003, 2004, when there was blowback and al-Qaeda started striking in Riyadh, the Saudis got serious. Today, the problem isn't Saudi Arabia. The problem is Qatar and Turkey. And of course, we also have strong relations with those two states. And so we do need to recognize the hypocrisy and the irony of our position.
Michael Rubin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.